The smoke smells of wet barley. A man is standing in the Halsey Gate holding a spear he was never trained to use. The passage behind him has been bricked down from 5 meters wide to less than 2, a repair made in a hurry in the last weeks by people who understood exactly what was coming. Beyond the gate, torches are moving up the slope in a line that does not end. It is the month of Abu, in the summer of 612 BC. Inside this wall is Nineveh, the largest city on earth, and it has one night left. What does the end of an empire feel like from the inside? Not the collapse described in textbooks, but the last ordinary night, the last meal, the last person who fell asleep believing the walls would hold. We can answer that with unusual precision, and the reason we can is the strangest thing about this story. Almost everything we know about Assyria survived only because Assyria burned. Nineveh stood on the east bank of the Tigris, directly opposite the modern city of Mosul in northern Iraq. In 705 BC, the king Sennacherib made it his capital, and then spent the rest of his life making it impossible to ignore. The inner wall ran for roughly 12 kilometers and enclosed about 750 hectares. Houses, orchards, canals, temples, and a residence he himself called the palace without rival. Perhaps 100,000 people lived inside it. At that moment, it is unlikely that any larger city existed anywhere on the planet. Here is the part most people never hear. Nineveh was a dry country city that solved water. Sennacherib's engineers cut a channel from the hills at Kinnus and carried it 55 kilometers to the capital, crossing one valley on a stone aqueduct built from roughly 2 million dressed blocks. That was around 690 BC, 4 centuries before Rome built anything comparable. Thorkild Jacobsen and Seton Lloyd excavated it in the 1930s. It is still standing. The streets smelled of river fish and wet clay, of dung, tamarisk smoke, and imported cedar. 19 years before the fire, in about 631 BC, the king Ashurbanipal died in this city. He had done something no Assyrian king before him thought to do. He collected writing. He sent agents into Babylonia with orders to find tablets and bring them back. Omens, hymns, medical texts, star charts, word lists, poems. In his own inscriptions, he claims he could read Sumerian and the difficult Akkadian of the old scribes, and even the stone inscriptions from before the flood. Whether he truly read all of it is a fair question. The collection was real. About 30,000 tablets and fragments recovered from Nineveh sit today in the British Museum. Picture that room. Damp clay, cut into rectangles sized to fit a hand. Reed styluses. Scribes pressing wedges into a surface still soft enough to smell of the river. Then the tablets go onto a shelf to dry. Most of them never fired, never hardened, because there was no reason to fire them. Clay dries, shelves are safe. Empires last. The empire had been unraveling for a generation. In 626 BC, an officer named Nabopolassar took Babylon and declared himself its king, and Assyria never took it back. In 614 BC, an army of Medes under Cyaxares came down out of the Zagros mountains and stormed Ashur, the old religious capital, the city that had given the empire its god and its name. Nabopolassar arrived after the walls were already down. The two men met in the ruins and made an alliance there. That is not reconstruction. That is what a single clay tablet in the British Museum records. The document historians call the Fall of Nineveh Chronicle. 2 years later, they came for the capital. The Chronicle gives us the calendar. The Allied armies arrived in the month of Simanu, Arjun, and Nineveh held through 3 separate assaults across roughly 3 months. The king inside was Sinshar-ishkun. He had worn the crown for about 15 years. What happened to him on the final night, we honestly do not know. The tablet is broken exactly where his name appears, and the famous story of an Assyrian king burning himself alive on a pyre comes from Greek writers more than 2 centuries later, and reads as legend rather than record. But we do know about the gate. In 1989 and 1990, an expedition from the University of California, led by David Stronach, excavated the Halsey Gate on the eastern wall. They found the passage deliberately narrowed, exactly as I described it. They found iron arrowheads scattered through the debris, and they found human remains. At least a dozen people, men, women, and children, lying in the gateway where they fell and were never buried. The man in the opening of this film is not a character I invented. He is a composite of the people who were physically found in that gate. Then, the fire. Mud brick does not burn, but cedar roof beams do, and furniture does, and stored oil does. The palaces collapsed inward under their own weight, and the shelves of soft, sun-dried clay went into that heat and came out as ceramic. Call it the second firing. Because this is the part that historians took decades to say plainly. Unbaked clay is fragile. It absorbs water and returns to mud. If Nineveh had simply been abandoned, if the population had drifted away over 50 years, if the roofs had opened slowly to the rain, Ashurbanipal's library would have dissolved back into the riverbank, and we would have almost nothing. Instead, the catastrophe worked as a kiln. The 11th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh survived that night. It is the one George Smith translated in 1872 when he realized he was holding a flood story written down long before the Hebrew Bible reached its final form. Assyrian medicine survived. Assyrian astronomy survived. The oldest complete library in the world survived because an army destroyed the building that housed it. There is a second irony sitting underneath the first. The Oxford Assyriologist Stephanie Daly has argued since the 1990s that the Hanging Gardens were never at Babylon at all, that they were Sennacherib's terraced garden here, fed by that aqueduct. If she is right, the world spent 2,000 years remembering the garden and forgot the city it belonged to. In 401 BC, an Athenian named Xenophon marched past these walls with roughly 10,000 Greek mercenaries in retreat from a failed war. He saw an enormous, empty city. He recorded its name as Mespila. He asked who had built it, and nobody could tell him. 211 years after the fire, the largest city on Earth had become an anonymous ruin that local people vaguely attributed to somebody else. You are doing what Ashurbanipal did. You are collecting photographs, letters, recordings, every message you intend to keep, and you are storing all of it on materials that require electricity, maintenance, subscriptions, and the uninterrupted survival of the companies that hold them. The Assyrians stored theirs on mud, on shelves, in a building they assumed would stand forever. The building did not stand. The mud is still here, in a museum, legible 26 centuries later. Nineveh is not remembered because it was powerful. Nineveh is remembered because it burned, and everything you own that holds your memory is softer than clay.